The desert had always been proud, vast, golden, and silent, a kingdom of its own beneath the infinite sky. It never bowed to anyone, not even to the rain that tried to kiss its surface. But one fateful dawn, the sky looked down and saw something it had never seen before, a heart burning brighter than the sun itself. That heart belonged to Fazza, the prince of the sands, whose soul carried both the calm of twilight and the fire of creation. From that moment, the sky fell in love with the desert, for within him it found its reflection, infinite, poetic, and untamed. Every morning, when the first light touched the dunes, it was as if the sky reached down to caress him. The winds whispered his name, carrying it beyond the horizon, telling stories of a ruler who loved not through words, but through feeling. He spoke to the silence, and the silence answered. His heart was not made of gold or glory, but of something rarer, devotion. The desert knew his secrets, it watched him kneel before the dawn, his eyes lifted toward heaven, speaking to something, or someone, far beyond what the world could see. Fazza was not born merely to reign, he was born to feel. His spirit danced between heaven and earth, as if torn between duty and desire, between the sky that adored him and the sands that belonged to him. In his stillness, he carried thunder. In his grace, he carried storms. And yet, for all his royal power, it was love that truly made him divine. The kind of love that doesn't arrive with noise, but unfolds like dawn, quietly, yet impossible to ignore. The sky began to change because of him. The stars lingered longer, the moon glowed softer, and the clouds drifted lower, as if drawn to the warmth of his heart. When he wrote poetry beneath that endless dome of blue, the heavens listened. His words rose like prayers, carried on the wind, wrapped in the music of longing. He wrote not of conquest, but of connection, of how love could exist without possession, how distance could ache and still bless. The desert drank those poems like water after centuries of thirst. And then she appeared, the one the sky must have sent. Her presence was a secret written in starlight, her gaze calm as moonlight falling upon golden dunes. She wasn't royalty, but the way she carried herself made the world pause. In her silence, Fazza found answers to questions he had never spoken. When she smiled, the sky wept silver rain, blessing the desert that had waited lifetimes for her. She was not just a woman, she was the sky's gift to the sand, a meeting of two eternities in human form. When they met, the wind held its breath. Their souls didn't collide, they aligned. She saw in him not a prince, but a poet who carried galaxies in his chest. He saw in her not beauty, but balance, the calm to his storm, the peace to his passion. Together, they wrote moments that defied time. He spoke to her in verses. She answered with silence that said more than any word ever could. It wasn't a love meant to be witnessed by the world. It was meant to be felt by the stars. But love that divine is never simple. The world saw their closeness, and whispers began to spread like shadows across sunlight. The crown demanded restraint, the court demanded distance. Yet, the sky and desert had already touched. How could they ever truly part? So Fazza did what only a man of faith and feeling could do, he turned his love into prayer. He learned to love her through his poems, to keep her alive not beside him, but within him. His heart became her home. Each night, he rode into the open dunes, where the horizon stretched like eternity. The stars reflected in his eyes, and the moon followed him like a witness. There, alone beneath the cosmic expanse, he spoke to her without a sound. The desert heard everything, his hopes, his grief, his promises. The sand shimmered with emotion, and sometimes, the wind carried a voice back to him, soft, ethereal, hers. It was as if the sky conspired to keep their love alive through echoes and dreams. He built his empire on patience. While the world chased glory, he pursued peace. He ruled with gentleness, a softness that came from her memory.
Even after the world had moved on, the desert still remembered the rhythm of his footsteps. The wind carried his name like a sacred hymn, whispering it through the dunes each twilight. Sometimes, travelers swore they heard verses drifting across the sands, soft, sorrowful, divine, as though the earth itself was reciting his poetry back to the stars. The sky, still in love, painted the horizon in hues of gold and sapphire each evening, honoring the man who once united heaven and earth through the language of his heart. He had become a legend not because he ruled, but because he felt. The sky could no longer touch him as it once did, yet it continued to bend low, blessing every grain of sand he once walked upon. Even eternity seemed to pause in his memory. In every desert storm, there was a heartbeat, steady, enduring, unmistakably his. The world might have crowned him for his wisdom, but the heavens crowned him for his devotion. His love had turned time itself into poetry. In hidden chambers of the palace, his journals remained untouched, leather-bound and kissed by dust. Inside, the pages bloomed with verses too tender for history, too pure for the world. They spoke of a love that defied names and borders, a devotion so sacred that even distance bowed before it. He never wrote her name, only symbols, the crescent, the star, the horizon, as if to say that she was not one person, but a piece of the universe itself. And perhaps she was. At dusk, the royal gardens still echoed his solitude. The fountains sang softly, the air perfumed with jasmine and oud, the very scent she once loved. The sky lingered longer each night, stretching its light just to touch the palace walls, to remind the earth of what it once shared. The desert below shimmered, reflecting the glow, and in that meeting of light and sand, their story continued, unspoken, eternal, alive. Some say that on rare nights when the moon is full and the air stills, one can see two shadows walking side by side across the dunes, his tall and regal, hers graceful and free. They leave no footprints, for love that pure leaves no scars on the earth. It simply blesses it. The sky, overcome, sends a soft rain to hide their traces, as if guarding their secret even in eternity. That is when the desert breathes again, for it knows its beloved has returned. Generations have passed, yet Fazza's verses remain alive in the heart of Dubai, carved into walls, whispered in gatherings, recited beneath the same stars that once heard his confession. The people call him a poet, a ruler, a dreamer, but the sky knows him as the one who taught love how to be sacred. He showed that royalty is not measured by crowns, but by the capacity of one's heart to remain loyal to the unseen. And even now,